Andrew Welch from the Y&R agency, a very warm welcome to the Red Zone. Now today, a concept called Brand Tencity. The premise, I understand, tension can make your brand irresistible. Before we get there, tension itself you define as a palpable energy created by opposite forces. Don't let's get too scientific, but what you can tell me, how does this impact on brands?
So I think if you look back at those brands who are engaging best in very difficult circumstances, we've all talked about the plethora of channels, the sort of attention span of a gnat that millennials have, the difficulty of maintaining that engagement. Those brands that are creating layers of interest, either through tension, through what appear to be contradictory forces, or that are adding and refreshing and reinventing what it is they stand for, seem to be those that are creating a deeper engagement, a more fulfilling engagement, and ultimately a more rewarding engagement with their customers. So tension or tensity is really the idea of an energy that's created by opposing forces. And the reason that's interesting is it somehow starts to force marketeers to rethink the traditional concept of the single-minded proposition. We've all grown up for many, many years through marketing schools and businesses to focus on a specific idea and an idea consistently engaged or communicated. And I think it's time to reconsider this idea of a single-minded proposition. And I think it's certainly time to reconsider the idea of consistency. We have a saying that consistency is the hobgoblin of the narrow-minded. If you are only consistent, you can be consistently dull. You can be consistently energetic. But consistency is still a one-dimensional vector. What consumers are looking for, we believe, is the layers and the tensions and the interest that's derived from these opposing forces.
How do you keep the layers and the tension authentic? Because what would concern me about this argument is that this whole move towards authenticity has become critical for brands. What you're suggesting is that you're almost creating, or you have the potential to create maybe what could be perceived as a false tension that exists within that brand world. I understand what you're saying, but the idea is that you have to keep it real. It becomes incrementally more difficult, doesn't it?
It does, and that's the challenge for marketeers. But to your concept of authenticity, it cannot be inauthentic. So as marketers, what we need to do is lift the lid of the brand and look at those things which are true and authentic to the brand and make sure that we bring them to life in a way that's interesting and meaningful. So if you look at brands like, well, just to give you an example, if you look to the US, Kmart was all about value, but it had nothing else in its dimensions. And as a result, we know the demise of Kmart. Target was all about value and chic. And those things were authentic to its brand. All we did was elevate those and make them interesting and therefore layered and diverse and multidimensional for the customer. If you look closer to home, something like Land Rover, it's not just about the outdoors. It's actually a highly sophisticated, highly technological, highly luxurious product. And we talk about it internally as tough luxury. If you look at the likes of Virgin, it's not just about irreverence. It's actually a deep care for customers. So you've kind of got this irreverent care. And it's in those things that are actually interesting, they are authentic, they are true, that the richness of the brand surfaces to create something
All right,
more compelling.
does there have to be, Andrew Welch, an equal weighting in terms of that tensity?
No.
Or can you still live with what is the original brand proposition and overlay other little vignettes within it?
I think that's true. I think the idea of focusing on something that is majority true and building these other areas is what creates that multidimensionality. If you look at something like Gap, well-recorded case of its demise, but Gap was originally really about this notion of lifestyle and comfort, and it started developing the notion of style, and they lost that style. And they just became about comfort, sort of thing your grandfather would wear, and as a result, the millennials of today were no longer interested. If you look at the likes of Nike, they are all about this authentic view on athleticism. So it's athletics or everyday athletes. So there is a core, but that core is never 100% anymore. That core is at best probably 60, 70%, and it's the other dimensions that make it rich.
All right, leading on from that multidimensionality that you talk about, can you change that from time to time? In other words, can you alter the tension entirely, because it talks to the other point that I know you have strong feelings about, and that is building brands in real time?
Yeah. So two questions there. The first one is really about we talk about a graphic equalizer in brands. There is a core, but it's no longer the 100%. And to have the other dimensions and knowing when to play those is an important part about knowing about your audience, which brings you to the second question, which is about relevance. So with any brand, we have that core and we look at the peripheral tensions that we can create and when to leverage those, much as you would on a graphic equalizer, to know when to leverage certain notions that appeal to a certain audience and other notions that appeal to a different audience, but always stemming from the core. Now, the notion of how to do that in real time is a real challenge, because increasingly I think the world's moving faster. If you're targeting millennials specifically, as we've said earlier, their attention spans are so small that if you're not targeting the right core with the right secondary dimension, you lose them instantly. And no answer to that, no magic wand or solution. It's something we're all struggling with. It's the real-time notion of relevance that's now determining how successful these brands are.
Andrew Welch from Y&R, thank you very much.
Thank you.